Hello, everyone, and welcome to Body Bags. I'm your Saturday reviewer. I am Sinema77, horror and cult film lover, and today we're going to be talking about the 1970 erotic vampire horror classic from Hammer. We're talking about The Vampire Lovers. Now, the movie stars Ingrid Pitt and Madeline Smith and Kate O'Mara and Peter Cushing and John Forbes Robertson, who they said was basically he also played Dracula in Hammer's Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires, and the idea was he was actually being groomed because Christopher Lee didn't want to play Dracula anymore at this point, and he was actually being groomed to basically kind of step in and become the next Dracula. Should Christopher Lee decide he didn't want to do it anymore, and so anyway, now this movie, like I said, it came out in 1970, and the thing about it is, Hammer was going through a difficult time when this movie was made because, I'm sorry, my throat's a little dry. Now, Hammer was going through a little bit of a difficult time when this movie was made, and the reason why was because, Hammer was, of course, was really well known for doing their, stuff from the 50s and the 60s. They did their Dracula movies, they did their, Frankenstein movies, Peter Cushing's Dr. Frankenstein and stuff. And the problem was in the 60s going into the 70s and stuff that the stuff that was working for them in the 50s wasn't really carrying over well. And a lot of people just weren't really getting into what Hammer was dishing out anymore. And so they decided, well, we need to, because movies from America are becoming more explicit in terms of gore and sexuality and things like that. And not just America, but movies all over the world becoming much more explicit and showing much more than they could. And so Hammer decided they kind of needed to do something, kind of push the envelope a little bit more with their movies too. And so they adapted the J. Sheridan Fanu's novella Carmilla, and which, it kind of, you could almost say it's like Dracula, but instead of Dracula being a man, Dracula is a woman seducing other women. And this isn't the only movie. There have been at least several movie interpretations of Carmilla. This one and Blood Spattered Bride, that's another interpretation of it. But the story's been adapted numerous times. But so anyway, and they did this as part of a trilogy. The other two, I believe, were Lust for a Vampire and Twins of Evil. And so the idea they wanted to kind of push more sexuality, put some gore into their movies and stuff like that. And this movie, I like that it says here, caution, not for the mentally immature. So that means you're going to see boobs. Just kidding, sorry. But anyway, though, the story starts off, you have a character who's known as the Baron. And he's waiting in this castle, and he sees this shrouded figure come out of the grave. And the movie's directed by Roy Ward Baker, who directed a ton of movies for Hammer, and very great director, very good at what he does. And the movie is beautifully shot. It's got what you want in a Hammer movie. It's got the beautiful gothic atmosphere. It's well filmed, it's well lit, and it looks great here on the Blu-ray. And surprisingly, this is Scream Factory, and this is easily one of their cheapest Blu-rays. We all know Scream Factory usually goes for pretty pricey, amounts of money. This one here, usually you pick this up for about $10 or under sometimes. But anyway, back to the story. So yeah, he's waiting, and this shrouded figure that we realize is actually a vampire comes out of a grave and goes and attacks someone and comes back. Well, he goes and he takes part of this vampire shroud, and it turns out that the vampire can't rest without the shroud. So he takes the shroud and everything else, and the vampire is like coming back, getting ready to get back into its coffin, and sees him. He's like holding out the shroud and everything else, and comes up and this character that we know is the Baron later in the movie. He hesitates. He's frozen in fear, and he sees this beautiful, sexy, voluptuous woman coming towards him, and he's almost a goner, But then her breast touches his. Her bosom touches a cross that he's wearing around his neck, and she recoils, and the fangs come out, and that's what able to get him to grab her by the hair, slice her head off with a sword, and that's when the movie begins. And then, so then we go to we have a party at a castle house. Yeah, we got a party at a castle, and we're introduced to two characters. Okay, we are introduced to the character of Emma, who is pretty much our female heroine in this movie, and that is played by Madeline Smith here. Who Madeline Smith? She was a Bond girl and beautiful, lovely, gorgeous woman. But the one thing I will say about her performance, though, is she almost kind of the entire movie. She almost has this kind of like almost like deer frozen in headlights look about her. She's always got this kind of blank, wide-eyed expression, but she's not a bad actress. I'm not putting her down. But we're introduced to her, and they're going to this castle, and it turns out she's friends with the niece who is in the castle. The niece, her name is Laura, and her uncle is the general, played by Peter Cushing. Now, somebody might come around and say, well, this movie really wasn't Peter Cushing's best work, and I'm kind of disappointed in him in this movie. It's like, I'm not, because, if you hear the commentary, you listen to the bonus features on there, they said that Peter Cushing, really had to plow ahead to do this movie because his wife had died when he was making it, and he was devastated, and he was trying to work through his grief and everything else. And he's not in the movie a whole lot. He's kind of in it around the beginning. He's in like the first act, then he comes back for like the third act. But he's Peter Cushing, and he's fucking phenomenal. He's just great in anything he does. But anyway, so they're having a party and everything, and then Dawn Addams, who is very well-known British actor. She's been in a lot of films. She's done a lot of stuff for Hammer and Amicus Films and things like that. She was in Tales from the Crypt. She's been in a lot of stuff for them. And she introduces herself, and she introduces her daughter, Mircalla. I believe that's Marcilla. Yeah, it was Marcilla. I'm sorry, Marcilla. And we are introduced to the gorgeous and lovely classic queen, Ingrid Pitt. Rest in peace. But so we're introduced to her, Marcilla, and the Man in Black, who John Forbes Robertson plays. He's basically kind of like the vampire who's kind of like in charge of everything, it seems like. And it seems kind of like Dawn Addams and Carmilla here kind of take their orders from him, I guess you could say. But so anyway, so he comes in, and kind of like the whole room stops, and Dawn Addams goes, and they whisper something to each other. And then she goes to Peter Cushing, and she says, I have to leave. I need you to do me a favor. Could you please watch my daughter for me and everything? I have to go. A friend is sick and everything. And Peter Cushing agrees to it. Yeah, that's fine. No problem. And so she starts staying with, Ingrid Pitt here is Carmilla. She starts staying with them. And it's weird because Laura starts becoming really sick. She's having nightmares. She's not sleeping. She's becoming even worse and worse. And everybody's they're starting to get suspicious of, Marcilla here. And so all of a sudden it's very sudden and abrupt, but it turns out that Laura dies, and Peter Cushing, sorry, but Peter Cushing gets, disturbed by this and everything else. And then we find out that basically Marcilla has disappeared. And so he goes away, and Peter Cushing, he goes away, and he's going to see the Baron. And meanwhile, we have Emma, played by Madeline Smith here. She is, living in this castle. Her father and a governess. The governess, played by Kate O'Mara. And she's trying to learn German and stuff like that, and learning to be a proper young woman. But she's destroyed over, because Laura was like a sister to her. They were best friends, and she was destroyed over Laura's death. And so, they're out riding one day, and Coach, gets stuck and everything. And Dawn Addams comes out of the coach and everything. And she tells, her father that she needs to go away. She's got a long journey. She's got to get to somebody who's sick and everything else. And could they please watch over her? This time it's her niece, Now Carmilla is her niece. And this time instead of Marcilla, they call her Carmilla. And so, she's Emma's floored by it. She loves the fact Carmilla's going to be staying with her and everything else. And so they start staying together. And then you got Carmilla is basically like she's, starting her kind of like doing the same thing she was doing before. She's starting to seduce the beautiful Emma, and Emma's talking about that she's in love with this man Carl, who was also, Laura was also in love with him, and Carmilla is getting jealous because Carmilla is a lesbian basically, and there's some beautifully erotic scenes between the two women, um, and then she's starting to turn she's starting to turn Emma into a vampire. And the weird thing is the Countess becomes entranced by Carmilla, and Carmilla seduces her, and is drinking her blood too, and everything else. Well, it turns out that the basically kind of like the butler of the house, he's getting suspicious, and he sends for the doctor, even though the governess, she's under the spell of Carmilla, and she says no, I'll send for the doctor if I think it's necessary, but he decides to step over her and bring the doctor in anyway. And so the doctor comes along and finds out, yeah, something's wrong, and then Carmilla attacks the doctor on his way home and everything else, and then she starts seducing the butler, and basically time is running out for poor Emma. And so Carmilla's pretty much, she's taken out everybody in the house and all this. And by the third act, that's when Peter Cushing arrives back, and he brings with him the Baron, and they go to this castle where the vampires were at the beginning, where the Baron was at the beginning of the movie, and we realize that Carmilla is definitely one of the vampires, and so they're looking to destroy her, and then they send Carl to to check on Emma to make sure she's okay. And meanwhile, Carmilla is trying to get Emma out of the house. The governess is pleading with Carmilla to take her, but she ends up killing the governess, and so Carl comes along, and they get into Carmilla and Carl, they get into a fight and everything else. And meanwhile, Peter Cushing is doing what Peter Cushing does. He's getting ready to slay the vampire. And so anyway, yeah, this movie is, it's really, really a good movie. I highly recommend it. It's a good gothic Hammer horror film, and yeah, I mean, I definitely would have this. Especially if you like, if you're into erotic vampire movies, you like your vampire movies with a little sexy edge to them, then yeah, I would definitely highly recommend picking up The Vampire Lovers. It's really good. Peter Cushing, like I said, some might argue it wasn't his best performance. I still think he still rocks the house. Rest in peace, Peter Cushing. But the man's a legend, and we all know this, and there's a reason why he's a legend. But Ingrid Pitt, just as gorgeous as can be. Her, the fact that she's this beautiful, exotic Polish, model actress and everything else really kind of, adds to it. And she's, you could easily see how she could easily, with her performance and her, stunning looks and everything else, it's no wonder she could seduce anybody, so it's easy to see how you could fall under her charms. And Madeline Smith, like I said, she does have that kind of like I said, that kind of frozen face, kind of like deer in headlights expression, but she does give a great performance. And you do feel genuine sympathy for her character, and you want to see her survive. And she's so lovely and sweet and wonderful. You don't want anything bad to happen to her. But anyway, though, yeah, that's going to pretty much wrap it up. We talked about 1970s The Vampire Lovers from Hammer. And I love the Hammer movies. They're really awesome. So anyway, that's going to end it for this video. If anybody took the time to watch this, I thank you for watching it. I appreciate you for watching it. I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you like what I did and you like what the other guys on Body Bags are doing, please like and subscribe. You get a video every day. There's a different reviewer every day. I'm your Saturday host. And, we'll always try to have good stuff for you. We'll always try to have great reviews for you. The other guys are great too. So anyway, thank you for watching. Have a good day, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.